All right, what was the last missionary we studied? I'm a little bit out of touch.
The mood carried.
Yeah,
Mary?
we did missions in Korea and Japan.
Yeah, all right. And let me get the thing around before somebody has to remind me. There you go. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, let me get this down here. All right, yeah, we're into Japan, right? Okay. Oops. So did we finish the section on Japan, Korea, where indigenization happened more quickly? We did that one?
Yes.
So we're ready for the next one. Okay, the next one is about Horace Allen. Interesting character. And again, I just want to be so careful not to misjudge people. Historians are always biased. Horace Allen was less a missionary, more a diplomat. That I think we can say is true. He really was, he's one of these guys that just really did well working with government officials. In fact, you remember that he actually met either one or two presidents of the United States when he was back. Just one of these guys that just seemed to gravitate toward political stuff and very successfully. He was a Buckeye, born in Ohio. Oops, sorry, I didn't get those first two. Less a missionary, more diplomat. He was in Ohio in 1858. He was a Presbyterian. I'd like to know what part of Ohio he was born in, because I'm from Ohio. Thank you. He served briefly in China, like less than a year there in China. And now this word dissatisfied is kind of at least if you remember reading Ruth Tucker, it's kind of a characteristic of his life. He was very fussy about things. Miriam, is that word fussy? Have you used that one? Because I asked somebody the other day and they hadn't known it. Really particular about things. So it was hard for him to be satisfied. So dare I ask, are any of you perfectionists? So if you work with people who aren't, you might find that it's frustrating. Okay? And so I think everybody is a perfectionist in some way. If there's an area that you like and you want it done well, but it may not be somebody else's area. So you end up getting transferred to Korea, of course. Not too far from China, actually very close. He was dissatisfied with the colleagues, and yet he paved the way for missions in Korea. But he did it more politically than he did in other ways, okay? Being the politician that he was. He did not, his relationship with the king, and back at that time, Korea had a king rather than a president. And remember, there's only one Korea at this time, right? There's no North and South Korea. Relationship to the king and to the progressives. Who are the progressives? Do you remember? Remember who the progressives were? They were Koreans who really wanted to see their civilization catch up with the Western world. Okay? When they began to get exposed to the Western world, more Europe and other places, they saw things that they really wanted, and they kind of saw themselves as being backward. And so he did he made connections with these progressives. Let's see. Let me just find the section where he talks about that. Okay. Okay, well, anyway, what happens is he eventually takes their case even to the United States to try to get people on board with Korea. Here historically, Horace Allen was very pro-Korean. He he wanted the President of the United States to help Korea, give more support to Korea. The President of the United States, however, was more in favor of support for Japan. So there was this conflict, and Allen never did get the president to recognize Korea as he wanted him to. But the progressives were those who were trying to make changes, and he wanted to help them with that. Anyway, he is asked to found a hospital, okay? And how many guys have we studied that had medical connections? And he did. So, and he'd only been in Korea for like a few months. But who was he specifically going to be helping? He was invited to help somebody very specific in Korea with medical needs. It was actually the king and queen of Korea on 257. It says, early in 1885, after only months of residence in Korea, Allen was invited to help serve the medical needs of the king and queen and was granted his request to establish a hospital in Seoul. You guys all know that Seoul is the capital, right, of Korea. So, there's just another, he's just the kind of guy that caught the attention of political people. Not everybody can do that, but he was gifted that way. And then the king and queen said, could you go back to your country and plead with your president to help support our country? And so he is appointed by the king of Korea to head a delegation to the United States. But he grumbled on the ship. You remember why? It was just something petty. Remember what he grumbled about him when he was on the ship?
Was it smoking?
Yeah, the Koreans were smokers. I mean, well, okay, Americans smoke too. But there was a lot of smoking, and there were lice and other bugs in the rooms, and he just, he was very proper. And he did not like that. He didn't have to worry about getting lice in his hair, though, did he? At least on top, maybe on his beard. But so he did give support for Korean independence. Korea is at odds with Japan, at this time. And the President of the United States, as I said, is favoring Japan. He sees a better ally in Japan. So he showed opposition to Japanese intervention, tried to get the president to help with that. But so who was the president? Theodore Roosevelt. Okay. You guys have you studied Theodore Roosevelt at all in your studies? I'm guessing, Marie. Okay, Mary, you have? Okay. Back to the Rough Riders, he's the one that kind of established the national park system here in the United States. So Allen is pro-Korean, Roosevelt was pro-Japanese. Allen thought he could twist the arm of the president, but it didn't work. Sorry. Didn't work. So he was frustrated. The president wasn't willing to do that. Okay? Am I going too fast? Okay. Yeah, actually, I don't think I mentioned this in the notes, but his strong views about Korea, on 258, it says Allen's strong views led to his recall in 1905. There was little question, writes Kang, the author, that Allen was dismissed from his post because he strove for Korean sovereignty in opposition to Japanese imperialism. So, he was in conflict with the president. So he eventually lost his position there. So there's Seoul, oops, right there. Okay. And these other two guys, we're only going to mention, okay? We're not going to spend time in the notes. I think I took these out. I had to make some adjustments. They're just two other guys whose names are well known when it comes to missions in Korea. But one guy that I do want us to remember of these three is John Nevius. We didn't talk about the Nevius method, did we? Okay.
Yeah.
This guy, not that the other two aren't important, but John Nevius really, he did some things that became kind of adopted for missionary work in general. Okay, so let's talk about him. He was born in New York in 1829, and he was part of the Dutch Reformed Church. He studied at Princeton, so you know right away the guy was highly qualified. He observed strict discipline to prepare for service. Who else did we study that did that? In fact, Sharon, you just mentioned that today, right? Hudson Taylor did. Remember that Henry Martin did too when he went to the Middle East. He died very young. So Nevius sailed with his wife to China, and he spent 40 years in China, but that's not what he's remembered for. Interesting. Usually when somebody spends that much time, you think, okay, John Nevius, China. But really, that's not what he's remembered for, and we'll see why. His method of evangelism, he used his home to train evangelists. So who else did we study that opened their home to minister to people? How many names do you remember? He was the same guy that didn't buy his wife an engagement ring because they needed money for their ministry. Who was that?
Have to go first.
Yep, Jonathan and Rosalind Goforth. Remember they opened their home? And he does the same thing in China. He's using his home to train evangelists. And John criticized other missionaries too. Look, anytime somebody is really serious and really dedicated and really driven to do something, there is going to be a tendency to be critical. And I just want to encourage you to be really careful if that is your tendency. I have to watch out for that myself. Criticized them because he felt like their ways were outdated, they were colonial, Evangelism was happening slowly, number one. Second dot, they settled into the mission station life. So you have your own little American or European community. You're not mingling with the people. That bothered him, and it would bother me too. We don't see that much anymore today. When's the last time you met a missionary that lived on a missions compound somewhere? It probably exists someplace, but it's not common.
Probably for training, like there's something radius maybe.
Yeah. Training is one thing, but when you're ready to get into the work full-fledged, you're right. And they hired the Chinese Christians to do evangelism. Good or bad?
Okay.
Yeah. So what do you call people that are expecting something for their work in ministry?
They call them rice Christians.
Rice Christians, yeah. You don't want to do that, man. If you want to help them out financially, find some other motive for doing it, but don't pay them to do ministry work. That's not to say that a pastor shouldn't be paid. Well, I think we all get that, but that's not the situation here. Well, he had a chance to divulge his evangelism method. He had a method that was not commonly used at that time for evangelism. So he attended what was called the Second General Missionary Conference in Shanghai, and there were over 400 missionaries present. And of course, this is in China, right? And man, he thought, this is my great opportunity to promote my new method of evangelism. Well, he found out that the missionaries there were not willing to change. They were satisfied with the way they've been doing it for all these years, and he really didn't get any support for his idea. And that really frustrated him. So he gets another invitation, this time to go to Korea, okay? In only 2 weeks. Remember, he was 40 years in China, right? 2 weeks, he gets to go to Korea, and because they had heard about his presentation. The Koreans, I don't know how they heard, but somehow they heard about this presentation he'd given in Shanghai. They say, hey, could you come here and share this with us? And so he goes. I'm guessing it's Seoul, I don't remember, but probably in Seoul, Korea. And they were excited, just a totally opposite reaction to his evangelism method. Isn't that interesting? If you try something and people don't seem excited about it, that doesn't mean it's a bad idea. It just may mean that maybe the timing is not right. Maybe it's the wrong group of people. Don't assume that if you try something and people don't don't like it, that it's a bad idea. He goes to Korea and they love it. And part of that is because, remember, Korea wasn't as traditional. They were a little bit more open to new ideas. They were more open to the West than Japan and China would have been. And so it makes sense from that standpoint that they might be open to a new idea like his. So what is this new idea all about? Did I give those points to you in your notes already? All right. Well, one is the use of middle and upper class natives to do work. And notice he doesn't use the lower class. Why? What's the issue there?
Would they be viewed as like insignificant?
They would. They would. My pastor came to visit me once in Brazil, visit us. And he made a comment. He said, if you target the upper class people, the lower class people will come. But if you target the lower class people, the middle and upper class people won't come. It's a stigma, in the society. So he had the right idea. And plus, most of the lower class people couldn't read. They had no education. How are they going to train people? They didn't have the resources to do that. So this is a good idea. And, there are missionaries today. Do any of you know missionaries that are actually targeting the upper class specifically?
Know of some to California,
Oh, yeah?
targeting the people, the actors and actresses there.
Okay. All right. That's cool. Some of you may know Luke Warner and Kim. No. Sorry, not Luke and Kim Warner. Ron Self's son. What's his first name? Self. Sorry. The Selfs are in Argentina, and they're working among upper class people. Now that means, guess what? They need more support than other missionaries because they have a nicer house, they're in a nicer neighborhood. They have to have and sometimes people tend to be critical, say, yeah, you want to reach upper class people, must be nice. You get to have a nicer car, nicer home. But that's not their heart. Their heart is Andrew Self, Andrew and Romina. She's actually Argentine, his wife. And it's tough work, but they're coming up with ways to reach them. So this was a good idea that Nevius came up with. Payment.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So you're saying like the use of middle upper class natives actually is a good thing?
Yes.
So then how come it says at the top that the root of the problem as he saw it? Does he think it's a problem?
No, the root of the problem was, okay, hang on. Yeah, there must be a, hang on, you're right. I messed up there. Just 1 second. Let me, yeah, there's a detail there because this concept of using them is good, but there's I apologize. Go back here. See if I can, if you dig that up, would you yell at me because it does discuss that here. Okay. Okay. Yeah, the old uses the more advanced and intelligent of the native church members in the capacity of paid. Okay. Yeah, that's why. Yeah, I probably should reword that because what it says is during this time, Nevius clearly pointed out the differences between the old system and the new system. The old uses the more advanced and intelligent of the native church members in the capacity of paid coal porters, Bible agents, and evangelists or heads of stations, while the new proceeds on the assumption that the persons employed in these various capacities will be more useful in the end by being left in their original homes and employments. Yeah, I apologize. This by itself is good. What he was critical of is that they were taking middle and upper class people and giving them special assignments that took them out of the places where they could best influence people in their ministries. Yeah, thanks for pointing that out. I probably just need to go and reword that. So they're paying them for ministry services, whereas really what we need to do is leave those kinds of people where they can influence those in the lower classes and help train people for ministry. Thanks for catching that, Laurel. And And then the idea of paying for ministry services, generally not good unless you're a pastor. And that's your livelihood. How do you know whether to pay somebody or not? If it's their livelihood, if that's how they make their living, then obviously they need money. But people who had jobs, working in the fields or in the factories or whatever, and then if you pay them in addition to that to do ministry work, that can be dangerous. That can be unhealthy for the church. So the Nevius plan is actually on page 266 of your book. And so I didn't put it on the slide here. Most of this stuff, if you look on page 266, most of this is really what we would consider pretty obvious. Missionary personal evangelism through wide itineration. In other words, try to reach a large swath of people in the area where you're serving. That doesn't mean that you're not going to focus on some individuals, but try to cast the seed broader. 2, self-propagation. Every believer is a teacher of someone and a learner from someone. So that's a really neat idea. You've probably heard this. People say everybody should have a Paul in his or her life and a Timothy, right? That's the idea. He wanted to make sure that these members weren't just sitting there listening to messages and being fed, but everybody needed to be actively discipling somebody. That's hard to do sometimes on the mission field, okay? It sounds really good on paper, and it is a good idea. The personalities get in the way, people who don't trust each other. It can be very difficult to make that happen. But I think that the idea is a good one, even if it is slow going. 3, self-government. Every group under its chosen unpaid leaders. Circuits under their own paid helpers will later yield to pastors. In other words, let the churches make their own decisions, let them get their own leaders, and then, get the missionary out of there. It's basically the idea of the missionary church planter moving on as soon as he can. Self-support. Number 4, systematic Bible study for every believer under his group leader and circuit helper. And you guys know how many, hundreds of different kinds of Bible study methods have been produced. And so his idea was to have something organized for people to learn the essential things they need to learn. Strict discipline enforced by Bible penalties. This is something we probably disagree with. He said if people aren't doing their homework, they get penalized. You ever hear that? This is not a Bible college situation, in the local church. Cooperation and union with other bodies of believers. Churches need fellowship. That's the idea there. And then non-interference in lawsuits. If somebody starts a lawsuit, this is based on 2 Corinthians chapter 6, don't get involved. Or is it 1 Corinthians chapter 6? Don't get involved with that. Don't get involved with legal matters that can make a big mess. And then general helpfulness where possible in the economic life problems of the people. How do you know how much to help nationals with money? There is no magic answer to that question. From the day I got to Brazil till the day I left, I struggled with that. I had one lady come. She said, I need special formula milk for my child because of my baby. My baby has allergies. And I gave her, in Brazilian money, it was fairly expensive to buy a bottle of that. And I gave her money. And then she came back to my door later on and said, I need more. I've run out. At that point, I said, I'd like to go meet your baby. and she wanted me to take her down to the pharmacy and buy her some more, I said, I'd like to go and meet your child. We got in the car and I said, which way do we turn to go to your house? And she said, Pastor, she said, actually, I don't have them. She was using the money for something else. And I felt really bad that I had swallowed that without, checking it out. And I don't know, I just can't tell you how to manage that. You have to just be careful. You don't want to go to either extreme. I know some missionaries won't give a dime to anybody for anything because they don't trust it. They don't want to create dependency. But you're not necessarily creating dependency every time you help somebody. That makes sense. I think there's a right way to do it. but there's no exact science. Yeah, Miriam?
We talked about that in community outreach class,
Yeah,
and I don't know the name of the book, but he said that you like want to help them find a solution for their problem, not like always just giving them money.
Yes.
That doesn't, like, sometimes it can help, like if
Yes.
it's like a one-time situation, but if they're like, I don't know, you don't want to give them money, but like help them
Yes.
figure out the situation, like help them find a job or whatever so that they can provide for themselves. I think that was
yeah,
interesting.
that's good. Just a guess, is that book called When Helping Hurts? There is a book.
I don't think so.
Okay.
It's yellow, but
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. But there is a book called When Helping Hurts, and it deals with that sort of thing. How do we know when we're actually helping somebody and when we're doing them a disservice?
I think it's something with neighboring. Like it's about.
Oh, The Art of Neighboring?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We went through that book in our Sunday school or Wednesday nights a few
Yeah.
years back. It's a good book. Yeah, and here we don't deal with it as much because we usually live among people in the same class that we are. You know, but when you're in a place where different classes are mingling.
Yeah.
It's more of an issue. All right, hey, we made some progress. Still behind, but that's okay. The idea is to learn. So we'll see you guys again on Monday, which means there's not gonna be any quiz this week, right? I'm not gonna hold you responsible for this stuff. On quiz. Thank you, Sharon. Good